I had always prided myself on being loyal. Loyalty to my family, my friends, and especially my job. For years, I worked tirelessly at one of the most successful marketing firms in the city. I started from the bottom, a fresh college graduate with nothing but ambition in my eyes, and I built my way up to become one of the firm's top executives. The pay was great, the work was challenging, and I thought I had finally achieved everything I ever wanted. But that was before John Caldwell, the founder and CEO of the company, betrayed me in the worst way possible. It all started when his son, Lucas, returned from overseas to join the business. Lucas was a cocky, entitled young man who had been given everything on a silver platter. He had never had to work for anything, and it showed. But his father, John, believed he was the future of the company. I had worked my way up through years of hard work, and now I had to watch as Lucas, with no experience, was handed the keys to the kingdom. At first, I did what any loyal employee would do. I tried to help Lucas learn the ropes. I shared my insights, offered guidance, and even took him under my wing. But the more I helped him, the more he began to undermine me. It was subtle at first. He'd take credit for ideas I came up with in meetings or make suggestions that were half-baked and expect everyone to praise him. I brushed it off, believing he was just finding his way. But I should have known better. One day, John called me into his office. I had no idea what was coming. I thought it was just a regular meeting, but I couldn't have been more wrong. "Mary," he began, his voice unusually cold. "I need to let you go." My heart dropped. I tried to process the words, but they didn't make sense. "What do you mean, let me go? I've been with this company for years, John. I've given my everything to this place. You can't just..." He cut me off. "It's not personal, Mary. But I need to protect my son's future. Lucas is going to be taking over the company. I'm sorry, but you're no longer needed here." I was speechless. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. For a moment, I just stood there, trying to understand how everything I'd worked for was being torn away in an instant. "You're firing me for him?" I asked, my voice trembling. John didn't hesitate. "It's not about him. It's about what's best for the company. I've made my decision." I left his office that day in a daze, not knowing what to do or where to go. How could he do this to me? After everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed for this company, he chose his son, a spoiled, arrogant kid, over me. But I wasn't just going to accept this. I knew that I had been wronged, and that betrayal would be the fuel for something far greater. Lucas may have been handed everything, but I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I would show them that I was far more valuable than they ever realized. The sting of John's betrayal was still fresh, but I wasn't one to wallow in self-pity for long. I wasn't just going to walk away quietly, head hung low. I had worked too hard, and I knew my worth. I just needed to find a way to turn this situation around. The first thing I did was take a step back and assess my options. I had been fired, but I wasn't out of the game. I still had contacts, knowledge, and an understanding of how the company operated. My first goal was simple. I needed to gather information. I had spent years working alongside some of the smartest minds in the marketing world, and I knew how to read between the lines. It was time to reach out to some of my old colleagues, people who were still working at Caldwell Marketing, and find out what was going on behind the scenes. I started by calling Sarah, a former coworker who was still in the trenches, working as a senior strategist. "Hey, Sarah," I said when she picked up the phone. "It's been a while." "Oh my God, Mary, I heard about what happened. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but I need your help." Sarah hesitated, clearly nervous. "What are you thinking? I'm still with the company, and I don't want to get in trouble." "I'm not asking you to do anything illegal," I reassured her. "I just need to know what's going on. Lucas is a mess, and John, well, we know what happened with him. What's the atmosphere like over there? Is anyone else feeling the way I do?" There was a long pause. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice low. "The whole company's been in turmoil ever since Lucas came back. People are quitting left and right. Some of the most talented people in the firm are being forced out, and Lucas doesn't have a clue about how to run things. But John's too blinded by the idea of passing the company to his son to see it." I felt a spark of hope. The information I had was valuable. If others felt the same way, maybe there was a way to rally the people who had been wronged and make a change. But that was only part of the plan. I needed to hit them where it hurt the most, their profits. The more I thought about it, the clearer the picture became. I had learned the ins and outs of the business, and I knew where Caldwell Marketing was vulnerable. The firm had a massive client base, and most of their contracts were based on long-term relationships that required careful management. Without someone who truly understood the client's needs, those relationships would deteriorate fast. Lucas had no experience with this kind of high-level client management, and that was going to be his downfall. I made a few more calls, quietly reconnecting with some of the other key figures I had worked with in the company. Together, we began to formulate a strategy. We wouldn't just expose Lucas for the fraud he was, we would make sure he lost everything that mattered to him. One of the first things I did was gather evidence. I had kept track of all the mistakes Lucas had made while he was in charge of some of the company's most important clients. I had written reports, kept emails, and stored every interaction. If things went south, I wanted to have a full case ready to present. At the same time, I worked on securing a few meetings with key players from other companies. If I could line up a group of investors and businesses that were willing to partner with me, I could launch my own company, one that would directly compete with Caldwell Marketing. I had all the resources I needed, the only thing holding me back was time, and I wasn't going to waste a second. One evening, as I sat at my desk reviewing the latest financial reports from Caldwell Marketing, a message from Sarah popped up on my phone. "We have a new opportunity to take down Lucas," it read. I knew exactly what that meant. Things were moving faster than I had anticipated, and the wheels of revenge were starting to turn. Things were escalating quickly. I could feel the tension mounting as I continued to build my plan in secret. Every conversation with my former colleagues, every new piece of information I gathered, added fuel to the fire. Sarah had sent me a message earlier that day about a new opportunity to take down Lucas. I was curious and eager to learn more. That evening, we met in person. I didn't want to take any chances with phones or emails. I chose a small cafe on the outskirts of the city, one that was quiet enough to have an uninterrupted conversation. As soon as Sarah walked in, I could see the urgency in her eyes. "I've got something big," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Lucas is starting to slip up. There's talk about him making shady deals behind the scenes to cover his tracks. But here's the thing, there's a bigger fish involved." "A bigger fish?" I asked, leaning forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who?" "John," she said quietly, glancing around nervously as if someone might be listening in. "It's not just Lucas ruining the company, John's been involved in some questionable deals with investors that could bring the whole company down. They're all linked. The mistakes they made when they brought on new partners, the faulty marketing campaigns they launched, it's all tied together. And they're hiding it behind closed doors." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. John was just as guilty as Lucas, and now, there was an opportunity to expose them both. But how would we go about it? I needed to play my cards carefully. Going public too early could backfire, and if I wasn't careful, I could lose everything. "We need concrete evidence," I said, my mind racing with possibilities. "Something that links them together, something undeniable. That's how we'll win." Sarah nodded. "I've got something. I've been working with a contact in the accounting department who's been keeping an eye on things. He's sent over some documents, accounting discrepancies, unusual transactions, you name it. If we get these into the right hands, we can take them down." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. This was exactly what I needed. With evidence in hand, I could bring Lucas and John's empire crumbling down. But I had to make sure I was one step ahead. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that this wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about taking control of my own destiny. "I'm in," I said, locking eyes with Sarah. "Let's do this. We bring them down, not just for me, but for everyone they've wronged." The next few days were a blur. Sarah had managed to get her hands on several key documents that proved John and Lucas were involved in illegal activities. I studied every page, every line, and I knew that with these documents, we had the upper hand. But I wasn't just going to hand them over to the authorities right away. I needed to make sure the right people saw this, and I needed to make sure they understood the full extent of the betrayal. I decided to contact some high-profile investors, the ones who had once turned their backs on me. I knew their weaknesses, and I knew how to play them. If I could get them on my side, I could take control of the situation. The power was shifting, and I was ready to seize it. I arranged a private meeting with a group of these investors. They were skeptical at first. After all, I had once been fired by Caldwell Marketing, but I could see the doubt in their eyes as I laid out the case. One by one, I presented the evidence, showing them how John and Lucas had sabotaged the company. Their eyes widened in shock, and by the end of the meeting, they were all on board. They saw the opportunity to take over Caldwell Marketing, and they were willing to back me. With the investors on my side, I made my next move. I knew that the only way to take Lucas down was by putting him in a position where he would be forced to admit his mistakes. I scheduled a meeting with him under the pretense of discussing the future of the company. He was eager to meet, perhaps thinking I was coming to beg for my job back. But I had other plans. The day of the meeting arrived, and I walked into the conference room with a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in years. Lucas looked at me with a smug expression, clearly still holding the power. "Mary, I'm glad you could make it," he said, his voice dripping with insincerity. "I've been meaning to talk to you about your future here." I sat down across from him, keeping my emotions in check. "I don't want to work here anymore, Lucas," I said, my voice steady. "But you and I both know that what's been happening under your watch is a disaster. You're losing control, and I'm here to make sure it all comes out." His face turned pale. "What are you talking about?" I leaned forward, placing the documents on the table between us. "These are the records of your shady deals, your illegal activities. You've been using the company to enrich yourself, and you've been dragging John down with you." Lucas stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "You don't know what you're talking about," he spat, his eyes wide with panic. "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I replied calmly. "And I'm not the only one who knows. I've got investors, the media, and the authorities on my side now. You and John are finished." Lucas didn't say anything else. He simply turned and stormed out of the room. I watched him go, feeling a sense of victory settle in my chest. The battle wasn't over yet, but it was clear that I had won this round. After the showdown with Lucas, the atmosphere in the room was thick with anticipation. I had made my move, but I knew the fight wasn't over yet. Lucas might have stormed out of the conference room, but I knew he was dangerous, and I couldn't afford to underestimate him. I had played my cards well, but now I needed to make sure he couldn't retaliate. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. I was juggling multiple conversations with investors, my new allies, and preparing for the moment when everything would come to light. As much as I wanted to feel secure in my victory, there was still that nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Was Lucas really done for? Or was he plotting his next move in secret? I spent hours at my desk, going over the evidence, making sure everything was airtight. The last thing I wanted was for someone to poke a hole in the case. But despite the paranoia that threatened to overtake me, I couldn't deny the fact that I was closer to success than I'd ever been before. I had set up a final meeting with the investors, a pivotal moment where we would confront both Lucas and John with the evidence. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. But I wasn't going into this blind. I knew Lucas had a temper, and I needed to be ready for anything. As the day of the meeting approached, the sense of unease grew stronger. I couldn't help but replay the past events in my mind, the lies, the betrayal, the pain that had led me to this point. But now, it was all about the revenge I'd been working toward for so long. The night before the meeting, I received a message from Sarah. It was short, but it sent a chill down my spine. "We have a problem. Lucas is making his move. Be careful." I immediately called her, my heart racing. "What do you mean? What's he planning?" "I don't know yet," Sarah said, her voice tight with worry. "But I heard from one of my sources that Lucas has contacted some powerful allies. People who can help him turn the tide. I'm not sure what he's up to, but we can't let him win. He'll do anything to protect himself." I was silent for a moment, considering my options. "Then we need to make sure we're ready for him. If he's bringing in reinforcements, then so are we. I won't let him take this from me." The next morning, I met with the investors again. They were all eager to get to the meeting with Lucas and John, but I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. They weren't used to going against powerful people like Lucas. But I had already made up my mind. We had to go through with it. The longer we delayed, the stronger Lucas's position would become. I wasn't going to give him the chance to regroup. When the meeting finally came, it was nothing short of a showdown. The room was filled with tension as Lucas and John arrived, their faces twisted in anger and frustration. The investors were all seated, waiting for the confrontation that had been building for weeks. I stood at the front of the room, my back straight and my mind clear. Lucas was the first to speak, his voice cold and threatening. "You think you can take me down, Mary? You're out of your depth. You don't know what you're getting into." I stood my ground, unwavering. No, Lucas, it's you who doesn't know what you're getting into. You thought you could destroy me, but look around. The tables have turned. I have the power now. John, who had been silent up until now, finally spoke up, his voice laced with disdain. You're wasting your time. The people here don't care about your petty vendetta. You've got nothing on us. I smiled, feeling the weight of the documents in my briefcase, the documents that would bring their empire to its knees. Oh, I think they'll care when they see what I have. This isn't about a vendetta. This is about justice. With a nod to the investors, I opened the briefcase and pulled out the evidence, the accounting records, the illegal transactions, the proof of their collusion. One by one, I handed the documents over to each of the investors, watching as their eyes widened with shock and disbelief. This is your undoing, I said, my voice steady. You can't escape the truth, Lucas. It's over. The room fell silent as the investors began to examine the evidence. I could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment settling in. Lucas and John looked at each other in panic, realizing that they had been caught. The once confident men were now visibly shaken, their power slipping away from them. You think you can destroy everything we've built? Lucas sneered, trying to regain his composure. I'll make sure you regret this. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I had played the game and won. And no matter what threats they hurled at me, nothing could take away the satisfaction of seeing them lose everything. You can threaten me all you want, I said, my voice cold. But the truth is out now. And there's no going back for you. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that the investors had already made their decision. They saw the truth. They knew what Lucas and John had done. And they weren't about to let it slide. By the time the meeting was over, both Lucas and John were being escorted out of the building. The investors had voted to remove them from the company, and I was appointed as the new CEO of Caldwell Marketing. The victory was sweet, but it was also bittersweet. I had achieved my goal, but the road to get there had been long and painful. Walking out of the meeting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The revenge I had sought for so long had been realized, but now, it was time to look forward. I had the power now. I had the opportunity to rebuild the company on my own terms. And this time, I would make sure it would never be destroyed again. The days after the meeting felt surreal. As I sat at my new desk in the CEO's office, looking out at the sprawling city below, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led me here. The months of planning, the sleepless nights, the betrayals, the backstabbing, it all seemed like a distant memory now. But the victory, the taste of it, was still fresh on my tongue. I had won, but I knew that my journey was far from over. There was still a lot of work to be done. The company had been left in disarray after Lucas and John's removal. Trust had been shattered among the staff, and morale was at an all-time low. But I wasn't going to let that stop me. I had been through hell to get to this point, and I was ready to rebuild it from the ground up. I couldn't just take the throne, I had to ensure that I ruled it justly and wisely. I started by calling a meeting with the core team, people I knew I could trust. Sarah, my ally and the one who had helped me gather all the crucial evidence against Lucas and John, was first on my list. She had been my confidant throughout this ordeal, and I owed her a lot. She walked into my office, a smile playing on her lips. You did it, Mary. I always knew you could. I nodded, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over me. Thanks, Sarah, I couldn't have done it without you. She sat down across from me, her eyes focused. So, what's next? Now that you've taken the company back, how do we rebuild? I smiled. First, we rebuild trust. We need to show everyone that things are different now. That it's not just about revenge, it's about leading with integrity. We spent the next few hours discussing strategies, ways to regain the employees' confidence, and how to secure the future of the company. It wasn't going to be easy, but I was ready to face whatever came my way. That afternoon, I called an all-staff meeting, something I knew had to happen. The employees had been through a lot, and they needed to hear from their new CEO. When everyone gathered in the large conference room, I stood at the front, my heart racing with anticipation. Thank you all for coming, I began, my voice steady. I know the last few months have been difficult. There's been a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt. But I want you to know that I'm here to lead this company with transparency, honesty, and, most importantly, respect for all of you. I could see the mixed reactions in the room, some faces were hopeful, others skeptical. But I knew this was a crucial moment. I couldn't afford to fail. I've fought for this company, for all of you, because I believe in what we do. I know we've lost our way, but together, we can rebuild. We're stronger than the betrayal that's been done to us. And I promise you this, we'll succeed, and we'll do it with integrity. No more games. No more lies. From now on, it's all about transparency, trust, and success. The room fell silent as I finished speaking. The weight of my words hung in the air. I watched as some employees exchanged glances, while others slowly nodded in approval. Slowly, the atmosphere shifted. I had earned their trust, or at least, I was on my way to earning it. Over the following weeks, I focused on getting the company back on track. I made changes to the leadership team, bringing in people who shared my vision for the future. I worked closely with the marketing department, the tech team, and the sales staff to ensure that everyone was aligned with the new direction. It wasn't easy. There were challenges, and there were moments when I doubted myself. But I refused to back down. I had been through too much to let it all slip away now. The memory of Lucas and John's betrayal fueled me, pushing me to keep going even when things seemed impossible. The turning point came when we landed a major contract with a prestigious client, a deal that had seemed out of reach just a few months earlier. The entire office celebrated, but I knew this was just the beginning. There was still so much work to be done, but we had proven that we could succeed. We had overcome the darkest chapter in the company's history, and we were on the path to greatness. But there was one last matter to take care of: Lucas and John. I had been thinking about them constantly. They had tried to destroy everything I had worked for, but now they were out of the picture. I had thought I was done with them, but there was something inside me that told me I needed to make sure they wouldn't come back and haunt me again. I reached out to my lawyer, and together, we initiated legal proceedings to ensure that Lucas and John would never be able to profit from the company again. I wanted them to lose everything, just like they had tried to do to me. It was the final step in my revenge. The last blow that would guarantee they could never hurt me again. When the court ruling came in, I felt a sense of satisfaction I hadn't expected. Lucas and John were ordered to pay restitution for their actions, and they were banned from any involvement in the company. It wasn't just about the money, it was about justice. And in that moment, I knew I had done the right thing. With that chapter officially closed, I stood at the helm of the company, ready to lead it into the future. The lessons I had learned, the pain I had endured, had made me stronger. I had fought for what was rightfully mine, and now, I was determined to make sure the company thrived under my leadership. I had gotten my revenge. But more than that, I had built something lasting. Something that couldn't be destroyed by betrayal. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace.